Welcome everybody to this morning's committee hearing and wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. I want to ask a question.
Okay.
How many people that are in this room today have toddlers, young children, or either young grandchildren? I'm young, 2, 3, 4. So my next question is, how many people in this room know what Yo Gabba Gabba is? To show the utmost in grandfatherly love, this Saturday, I'm taking my grandson, to see Yo Gabba Gabba. For those of you that don't know what it is, I'm going to surprise him, and when we first get there, he's going to be, to watch his face is going to be priceless, but for the next hour and 15 minutes, I'm going to be in Hades. But anyway.
Just take your BlackBerry.
I don't know how to operate it yet. I just got the BlackBerry. No. So anyway, I'm excited. It should be fun. Is anybody else here going to take their children or grandchildren to see Yo Gabba Gabba? Nobody? Oh my God. All right, let's do with this. In fact, so these are all on items. I can't take those now. Okay, we don't have a quorum as of yet. I am joined by my friend and colleague Jan Perry. Mr. City Attorney, what we'll do, the actions that we take now will be deemed to communicate from the chair.
Yes, sir.
Wait a minute.
We have a new one?
Oh, I'm just saying, who is this guy?
I was here last time, way back. Mr. Torres.
I wasn't warned that I was going to...
Miss Sarah's on vacation, enjoying her Thanksgiving weekend early. So.
And she didn't even tell me, so she's going to pay.
I told Andrew.
I know Neil's not here. He's going to pay as well. All right. So what we'll do, we'll start out, if you could read items 1 and 2. No, I didn't realize he was there. I looked over and was shocked. Anyway, good to have you back.
Thank you, sir. Item number 1 are CRA and CO reports relative to a cooperation agreement with the Department of Public Works to fund cleanup and beautification services in the Normandy 5 redevelopment project area.
Okay, so on that item, we will adopt the CAO report. That brings us to item number 2.
Item number 2 are CRA and CLA reports relative to a parking agreement with Parking Concepts, Inc. to provide parking for the CRA's downtown region staff.
Okay, then on item 2, we'll adopt the CLA report. I'm going to change the agenda around just a little bit. So what we'll start off with will be item 5. We've just been joined by Mr. Cardenas. In fact, hold off on item 5. And if Mr. Cardenas is comfortable, items 1 and 2 will not be a communique from the chair. They'll be recommended by this committee.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. So now, if you could read item 5.
Sure. Item 5 are motions Weston Reyes and Parks Perry relative to authorizing LAHD to extend the term of the rent escrow account program and utility maintenance program contracts relative to LAHD and City Attorney to report on the validity of allegations of conflict of interest against LAHD rent escrow program contractors.
Okay. I think what we'll do is we've got several cards. Maybe let's just go through the cards first, starting with Jim Clark, David Schultz, and Tim Sauer. And now we've been joined by Mr. Reyes. Jim.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Jim Clark. I'm the Executive Director for the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. Several months ago, maybe even a year ago, as you recall, we've kind of there's two motions, obviously, we're hearing here, but one, with outreach contractors, we had kind of opposed that whole theory, and two, there was some conflict of interest that we were looking into with regard to the contractors and people in REAP. Because of these two motions, I truly want to thank the committee. I want to thank the Housing Department because we've had two good things come out of it. Number one, there was a contract created for outreach to rental property owners for the first time ever, and we'd like to thank you for that. Also, with the new guidelines with regard to contractors, it clearly says explicitly that they serve in an advisory capacity only, which is something that we had fought for. We didn't like the fact that they had sign-up authority on these inspections. So I want to thank you. Those are two steps forward, and we appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
My name is David Schultz. I'm a certified property manager, offices in Glendale, 48 years selling and managing apartment buildings. I'm here to object most strenuously to an extension of the REAP program. I believe it is very unfair. I would challenge its constitutionality. I think there are serious conflicts of interest, and I don't believe the Coalition for Economic Survival is an impartial person to be involved in judging whether or not owners have properly taken care of defects. There are many other things, but I think that this city council should understand that this kind of law is driving people out of the apartment business in Los Angeles. I can't sell any more buildings that are subject to rent control, and I won't. And I'm advising my clients to sell them and get out of it, and you're going to have lower quality people owning and managing apartments as the years go by because of this terrible bad law. So I'm strenuously objecting to it. I'm urging you not to pass this thing and have it continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Tim Sauer. I've been a property owner in the city of Los Angeles for about 35 years and managed about 550 units with a heart to always do what's right for our tenants. It's a genuine attitude to take care of our customers. And we found that, I've been a victim of, the LA Housing Department's abuse, and I can cite many, many, many examples, which I'm not here to complain about any specifics, but I have been part of the REAP program and trying to get out of it. And I honestly fell into a REAP issue because of a single screw missing out of a vent in a water heater, which, when I went to the general manager's hearing, I was under the impression that it was a completely different issue than that screw in the vent. I was thinking that it was due to, some unapproved construction. We ended up in REAP, and we were in there for 6 months, and they, confiscated, 40% of our rents there for that period of time over a screw. It was like, and then we had to go through the committee to get out of it, and then the city council vote. It's like, what's going on here?
Thank you. Thank you. If I could have Jerry Feldman come forward, Bill Huey, and Carol Knapp.
Did you call my name?
And your name?
Feldman?
Who?
Feldman?
Yes, Jerry. Was it Jerry? Yes, you're first, Jerry. You're first.
Okay, I'm a licensed certified public accountant in California, license number 11386, so I'm very familiar with audit procedures and accountings, and I'm urging the appropriate authority to have a certified audit of this REAP account, because I've heard various rumors about theft and mismanagement of this REAP account. And nothing is appropriate unless it's a certified audit by a certified public accounting firm. And they issue an opinion letter to their report. And if appropriate authority doesn't do this, then it lends itself to being a joke. So I'm urging the appropriate authority to have a certified audit of this REAP account and designate each property to see what was taken in and what is left and what was misappropriated and...
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Bill.
Hi, I'm Bill Huey. I'm the president of Fair Housing Coalition. We're a group of landlords who believe in equality under the law for renters and for landlords. One of the main reasons landlords get put in REAP, and I got put in REAP, and I'm still in REAP over this, is I've had long-term tenants. I'm Hispanic, so I'm not going to slant that. But certain cultures, certain minorities have a lot of children. And I have, in some of my apartments, a one-bedroom apartment, I have 6 people living in there because they just made more babies. Now, you enter the apartment, you would think you're in a storage facility because everything is piled to the roof, and there's about 3 feet of walk space through the whole apartment. These people are poor. They can't afford to move out and get a larger apartment. The city comes along. They're moving things to find holes in the wall, and then they put me in REAP. So, I mean, what do? Evict people I've had for 15 years? I like these people. I genuinely care about them. There has to be a mechanism to subsidize poor people when they outgrow the apartment so the landlord can get them out. They can rent a 2-bedroom. They won't be so congested. And the landlords is being put in REAP for something the tenants are causing. Bad tenants are not being cited.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Knapp.
Yes, my name is Carol Knapp. I used to own income property in this city, but D-Day for me was 2003. I would never own any business in this city because it's killing small business, small mom-and-pop landlords, and giving property to corporations. This is what they've been doing for 30 years that I know of, ever since Hahn was slumlord, had his slumlord task force in the city attorney's position. These people go after the weakest members of society, like a cougar who goes after a herd and picks out the weakest members. Isn't that right, Mr. Reyes? They go after little old ladies in your district who have a duplex. Go after them because they're the weakest members and cannot defend themselves. They take their money so that they can't defend themselves with a lawyer. I retired in 2002 from the schools as a psychologist to get a law degree specifically for the purpose to sue you. Because you are thieves. And as far as conflict of interest...
Wait a minute.
I didn't get my finish.
Wait. I don't know how other committees are run, and even if things that happen on the council floor that, I don't abide by. But nobody is going to come to this committee, mention us directly by name, and call us names. It's not going to happen. Your time
I just did.
Your time
I just did.
Good.
And I will again.
Good. Don't drink any more coffee. Steve...
Violate my rights.
Steve Arredondo, Larry Gross, and Brett Terrell.
Can I give you this?
Yeah, just give it to the clerk.
Maybe somebody in the council can get back to me on this. My phone number's on.
Oh, wait, who's first? Steve, you're first, Larry, and Brett.
Good afternoon, council members. Many of the potential claims of conflict of interest or perceived conflict of interest have been addressed by the additions of regulations into the contract and also the addition of a 6th contractor. But let us be clear, much is made about the role of outreach contractors, but basically the attacks on this contract are basically attacking the messenger. Detractors of REAP and the program overstate the power of REAP contractors have over the REAP process. Outreach contractors do not place properties in REAP. The housing department places properties in REAP, and this is after at least a minimum of 2 inspections, in many cases more than that. And after a hearing is held where landlords also get the opportunity to make their case as to why they shouldn't be in their property. In my experience, in many, if not most cases, if a property owner can establish that they're making good faith efforts, either by providing permits, bids, contracts, then they're not placed into REAP.
Thank you. Larry.
Larry Gross, Coalition for Economic Survival. We urge your support of these contracts. This program has been vetted by the City Council, LAHD, the CAO, the City Attorney, probably more thoroughly than any other contract. baseless allegations of conflict of interest have been put to rest. We have no problems with anyone looking into conflict of interest in this program or any other program, but no one has come forward with any examples or proof that the conflict of interest exists. LAHD has bent over backwards to ensure that there's not the slimmest appearance of any conflict of interest. And now we have even an additional landlord contractor. This is an important program. The previous speakers have proven the need for programs like this to protect tenants. This program strengthens the city's effective war on slum housing. There's no reason not to approve this. We urge your support today. Thank you and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Yes, Brett.
Thank you. My name is Brett Terrell. I'm the Director of Advocacy for the Inner City Law Center, and we're one of the contractors and urge your support of this program. One of these things we've really seen with the foreclosure crisis is properties are going into REAP are going to foreclosure long before they go into REAP, and many landlords who are flipping properties just walk away, and it goes into REAP. Without the REAP program, without outreach to the tenants are left with no information about what is happening with the case. By paying REAP, the money is available for repairs when the bank finally takes over to keep the utilities on. And many of the small-time landlords are actually happy to meet with us. For example, I'm going Saturday. There's a landlord on the east side who works Monday through Friday. He can't take off during the week to work, but I'm available on Saturday, so I'm coming in on Saturday to meet with him and to take a look at the property, see what repairs that need to be done. We're also very helpful in helping landlords get access to the units, and they've been very grateful for our cooperation, our help on that.
Okay. Thank you. Sabrina Simmons.
Hi.
Good morning.
Hi, how are you guys? Okay. You already have my name. I'm here to tell you, as an owner of a duplex, that LA Housing and the REAP program are really a joke. Now, I understand that maybe you guys started out thinking that you had a lot of tenements and slum housing going on in the city of Los Angeles. But what you really have, what is happening with the REAP program, is it is affecting primarily not single family, but duplexes, 4 units, 5 units, 10 units, things that are owned by older people, individuals, a lot of older individuals. And the way the REAP program is structured, it is such that tenants are actually motivated by these other companies, like whatever they're called, the fair, whatever, and they are suggesting to the tenant that if they complain about things, they can get their rent reduced by 50%. Then the LAHD, they call them up, LAHD comes out there, and if it is the slightest thing, one gentleman already told you about...
Wrap it up now. You got to wrap it up.
I'm sorry?
I said you have to wrap it up. I said finish your sentence.
Oh, okay.
You're out of time.
So what happens is everything that the LAHD does by their representatives is weighted heavily, completely in favor of the tenant. There are a number of smaller landlords who can tell you literally personal experiences they have had that have been where their rights have been egregiously violated because...
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. You've had everybody gets 2 minutes. If I let you go on, that means I have to let other people go on. So anyway, thank you. At this time, I want to bring the housing department people up.
Okay, let me just say, if you want more information, any one of you,
You're welcome to
call
give
me.
it anytime.
Come on up, guys. Thank you. Okay, who's going to start?
I will. Good morning.
Good morning.
Roberto Aldape, Assistant General Manager of Los Angeles Housing Department. We thank you for the opportunity to be able to address this agenda item, which actually has 2 motions within it. The first motion pertains to the extension of the outreach contracts, and I believe this is a revisit of what occurred back in July 21st of this year, whereby there was an extensive, somewhat of a lengthy discussion regarding the outreach contract and the extensions thereof. And after back and forth motions and motions for reconsiderations, I believe what was finally finalized, though it wasn't on record by way of a motion, was that there was going to be an extension of 6 months with a 1-year extension renewal. However, that was not put forth by way of a motion, and so therefore I believe this motion is appropriate. Let me put something in perspective based on hearing the comments from the public. In the city of Los Angeles, the housing department has the responsibility of over 760,000 multifamily units. In the rent escrow account program, there is approximately 1,400 buildings comprising of 6,000 units, which comes out to less than 1% of the folks in our universe of 780,000 units end up in REAP. Less than 1%. The rent escrow account program is the only enforcement instrument that we have in order to gain compliance by the vast majority of landlords who do actually comply. And this is after granting somewhere between 90 to 120-day extension, getting these landlords to comply. When they don't comply, then it gets sent to the general manager's hearing officer for introduction into the rent escrow account program. So we're not talking about a very large-scale properties. We're talking about the folks who just refuse to comply with the code enforcement on correcting code violations. Having said that, we support this motion to fund these programs, these outreach contractors, for 6 months, as set forth in the Weston Reyes motion with the 1-year extension. I can speak to the second part of the agenda.
Let me ask a question. I mean, there was one gentleman that talked about, and I know things, nobody's perfect, but I can't remember his name, but he talked about a screw. One screw. I mean, how does something like that happen? Is he still? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, I just found that.
I don't know the specific case of it. I will tell you that in our code enforcement, in the conveyor belt compliance, under code enforcement, there is a case management process whereby a senior and a principal inspector will review the case to see if it's appropriate, that the violations are appropriate or serious enough to be put into, to be set forward to the general manager's hearing for consideration of introduction into the REAP program.
Okay, I know Mr. Carnes has a question, but in fact, Mr. Carnes, I'll let you answer.
On that point, Mr. Chairman, look, what you're telling us is, you're telling us that there are supposed to be checks and balances so that that kind of incident doesn't trigger a REAP file on that particular landlord on that particular property. But the question I have to you isn't as to whether or not you have that on paper. My question to you is, how do you make sure that what's happening in the field is actually following the protocols that look good on paper? Because I would venture to say that I have examples in my district, not on the REAP program specifically, but I have examples in my district where various departments within the city have actually driven some property owners crazy over incidents like that, where you have an individual who's not following the letter of their responsibilities. So my question to you is, how can you assure the policymakers of this city, which is this committee, how can you assure us, show us, prove to us that that's not happening? That what they're supposed to be doing out in the field, they're actually adhering to. People get attitudes. People get egos. Everybody has an ego. So you have an inspector who says, you know what, landlord, I don't like you. You didn't greet me very nicely. I don't like the tone of your voice or what have you. Let me show you who's boss. How do you prove to us that you have checks and balances? And also on top of that, are you going to show us that you've actually reprimanded somebody for doing that at least once in the last year or 10 years? Because if you don't have any reprimands in the last 10 years, then what you're telling this committee is you have a perfect system with no flaws that is laden with human beings, with egos and sometimes attitudes.
I cannot.
And look, listen, excuse me, I'm not here for applause. I'm not here for applause, so please, let's let the gentleman answer the question.
I am not going to sit here and speak before this committee and tell you we are perfect. I will stipulate that there are inconsistencies.
Okay.
I will stipulate that there are issues regarding quality assurance. I will, however, assure you that we recognize the cracks in the system. And I will assure you that we are addressing those cracks in the system as regards to quality assurance and consistency in inspections. Now, having said that, we have put forward within the last year measurements because we hear it. As a result of this rent study, we met with landlords and we met with tenants. We've heard the complaints from landlords. We take those things very seriously. And we have put forward a process within the department as it relates to code enforcement, as well as housing investigators as it relates to investigation enforcement of the RSO. We have put forth, I think, reasonable measures by not only training, but also equipment to ensure that there is consistency and quality assurances in our inspections.
Okay, but excuse me, when you use the word assurance, the word assurance to me is malleable. It's not black and white. So how can you show us proof that your assurances actually have real, tangible, live examples of what you've done to correct these imperfections that you just admitted to?
The proof is in the pudding. And that is...
I haven't seen the pudding. I don't even know what color or what flavor it is. Show me the pudding.
And that is, in the code enforcement, we get compliance.
Compliance, you said?
Compliance by property owners to repair these violations. We don't have an agenda. I'm not saying, just so you understand, I'm not saying that you, as an individual, have an agenda. What I'm saying is, for example, how many people do you have working in this particular segment of your department? We have 120 inspectors.
120 inspectors. Okay.
In code enforcement.
In code enforcement. You're not one of those 120 inspectors, are you?
No, I supervise those inspectors.
You supervise those inspectors. So are you going to tell me that if I visited your personal office, that you could sit down, or not, maybe the city attorney says the council member is not privy to look at these files over your shoulder, so you can explain some of them to me. Are you telling me that if I went to your office, you would be able to show me where you found some cracks in the system, some inconsistencies, and then that you could explain to me the corrective measures you took when an inspector stepped over the line, when an inspector actually allowed his attitude or her attitude to get in the way, et cetera?
Yes.
Are you telling me that you have examples like that?
And we welcome your visit.
Then I will visit you. I will visit you. And I appreciate the fact that I'm welcome. Because whether I'm not welcome or not, then we would be talking to the city attorney, the city attorney, to find out what my rights are as a policymaker and what I'm privy to. So I'm glad you said that. I do appreciate that, and I will be visiting you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And before I turn it over to Mr. Reyes, I just want to remind the committee that the focus on this item relates to the contracts. Now, each and every one of us have a lot of concerns in our districts where it relates to the REAP program. I know in my district, I get concerns from a lot of seniors that are kind of on fixed income, and it's difficult for them to do the things that they need to do. So what I will work on is we would maybe agendize just the program so that we can talk about all of the aspects of it. But today, if we could focus on was there a conflict or not, and extending the contracts. But with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Reyes. But I think Andrew will get with you. Let's come up, in the new year, we'll come up with a time, and let's just have a real discussion where it relates to this. There are merits on both sides, and I've had several meetings, like I'm sure my colleagues have, with individuals that have concerns about the way that the program works. So I'd like to, agendize just that and give it the type of quality time that this issue deserves. So with that said, Mr. Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning.
Morning.
When we look at this extension of this contract,
what's the number of cases that you're engaged with, the 120 inspectors? How many cases do you think you have, let's say within a 1 month period, or maybe a 1 week period? Can you give us a number, more or less?
How many cases are referred to REAP?
Yes.
Inspections? Average 70 cases.
70 cases, and that's a week?
A month.
A month?
Yes.
And how much time does each case take on the average? When you're...
From the notice to correct to be end up to REAP, average of 4 months.
4 months. So in this 6 month period, when, for example, I have conditions where we have mold, deteriorated kitchens, toilets being pulled out of the bathrooms, you know, intolerable conditions for tenants for whatever reason. Those types of cases, on average, come up. How many new cases do you get a month?
Most cases are really, our inspectors look at those issues, but is not under their jurisdiction to cite and enforce the correction. It's County's Department of Health to take care of that issue. But there are very many issues that lead a property to be referred to REAP. Majority health and safety issues. The constituent in here mentioned that 40% rent reduction was given for one school. I strongly doubt that. I can look into that case. 40% rent reduction is based on a number of violations and severity of the violations. Rent reduction starts from 10% to 50%. If a constituent receives 40% rent reduction, it means there are various serious health issues and safety issues in that property. And it can be fire and safety issues, it can be habitability issues. Sometimes amongst that, there might be maintenance issues as well.
If I may,
Yes, please.
I think in those cases where there is immediate danger, imminent danger to the tenant, we have an urgent repair program or a tenant relocation inspection program whereby the inspector will make the referral to another unit within the code enforcement division to go out and do an immediate inspection and assess the imminent danger to the residents of that unit to determine whether or not there should be a urgent repair to correct the violation.
And I just want to emphasize that there's always room for improvement, but I also know that in my experience, for the most part, I've had gone through processes where inspectors have been diligent. I have seen human beings mistreated, and it makes you wonder if you're even in this country where the way they are treated. There are landlords who have been good landlords, and they work with us when they realize the parameters of the law. And information is very important. Education is very important. So there's a balancing point that we need to reach. But I am grateful for your work and those of the inspectors. 70% of my district are renters. I believe in the city we're close to 65. And so when you look at the nature of this environment, we need to strive more to reach that balance. I think that's what these 6 months are about. I will support that. But I think in following the chairman's leadership, in terms of directing this analysis, it would behoove us to look at what does this program consist of, and what does that inspector go through every day? I mean, how many cases does he have every day? How many fires is he putting out? I mean, how many personalities is he dealing with? You know, who's helping him deal with the social crisis? I mean, there's one gentleman that I know who's like a social worker. He makes referrals. He's helping the tenants. He's trying to help the landlords work with the financing. And this is one inspector trying to do the right thing. And yes, I have seen the John Waynes and the folks with the badges that come and say there's a new sheriff in town. There is that attitude as well. But there's that balancing point that we have to reach. But I appreciate your hard work and look forward to supporting you any way I can.
If I'm just maybe...
Yes, Roberto, go on.
I think it's important, and we've embarked on a process whereby our principal inspectors who act as office managers, if you will, of the regional offices were located in 5 locations throughout the city. And they've been requested to work closely with the council offices, particularly those folks in the field offices, to build that relationships so that when there are issues from constituents, renters or landlords, they have a go-to person, if you will. And I
Right.
believe our offices meet with your field offices on a monthly basis, if not sooner, periodically.
Mr. Chair, that's what I'm trying to elaborate here, is that I have come across inspectors where they will ask us, okay, who's the house service provider? Who is working with psychiatric care? Who's working with gang intervention? Help out this family. This is more than just mold in the walls. There's a whole other array of issues affecting this family, and they've taken that step. I have experienced that, and I do want to thank you for that, because that's the other side of the coin that we're not talking about. You should be acknowledged for that work, because there's a lot of roles you're playing at one time. When you walk into these apartments, you're talking about someone's home life, and that hits them right in the face. And so I sometimes wonder who's helping them deal with those sociological and those pressures. And I just want to put that on the table as well. Thank you.
Well, just interesting that we are working with the personnel department to look at customer services and how to deal with situations that might be hostile. What do our inspectors do when they encounter a resistance to an inspection, either by a tenant or by a landlord? So we understand those social issues and human characteristics that need to be resolved. So we're working with the personnel department in that regards.
Thank you.
Okay, and we've been joined by Councilmember Alarcon. Roberta, did you want to go on and talk about the...
As it relates to the second motion, in the Parks Perry motion, again, this was an outgrowth of a July 21st, not only exclusive to July 21st council meeting. I believe there was several council members. There was somewhat of a discussion regarding conflict of interest that the outreach may be involved in. And this was actually put forth by way of a motion, even though it was discussed on July 21st, it was put forth in the motion on August 20th. When we received the motion, the housing department took these issues very seriously. We didn't wait for it to come to the committee to be for us to be instructed to start this investigation. I instructed Roy Babazadi, my director of compliance, who oversees the REAP unit, to start reaching out to find out where these allegations stem from. As a result of that, we've had several meetings. 2 meetings. The first meeting was with the California Apartment Association, their director, Ryan Manier. Ms. Babazadi met face-to-face with him and asked him if he knew of any, or his organization knew of any such allegations or any concerns in regards to the motion, and he replied in the negative. We also met with Jim Clark, the executive director for the Apartment Association, AGLA, and we asked him for instances or examples, and we got a negative from him as well. We reached out to the outreach contractors and asked them to bring forward any cases by which they may have against the City of Los Angeles, or any instances where there might be a conflict of interest, and they also replied in the negative.
Even Larry?
And we also reached out internally within the department, with particularly our code enforcement folks. We met with the director and the chief of inspectors, and they knew of no allegations, have heard of no allegations or instances that could be regarding this motion. So our preliminary assessment in regards to this conflict is that we have not found any. I'll let the city attorney address any other issues in regards to that.
Please.
Really, there is this, well, number one, the city attorney's office does not have an opinion on this. Secondly, with respect to the research that was conducted, Well, we don't have, to clarify, we don't have an opinion as to the existence of a conflict of interest. One, because it wasn't specifically requested by council, and so pursuant to my office's direction, we didn't render an opinion. But having said that, and having worked with the client in undertaking an investigation of the motion, I'm aware that we uncovered no evidence, no concrete specific instances of conflict of interest, and instead what we found were allegations that were unsupported by any concrete facts. As Mr. Adolphe mentioned, we reached out every possible source, including the council offices, for identification of specific instances. And so having said that, what I can represent to you is that I'm unaware in my capacity as a deputy city attorney of any specific instances where there has been a conflict of interest involving the REAP outreach contractors.
Okay, before I go, I wanted to see if Ms. Perry, are you, okay, I think Mr. Cardenas.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Question to the city attorney. You didn't find any conflicts of interest, but I'm curious if there's an organization that's being contracted by the department, and that organization has people who work for the department, because a lot of these organizations are not-for-profits. If somebody works for the department and say they're on the board of one of these organizations or what have you, is that a perceived conflict of interest but not a legal conflict of interest, or it's just not even a conflict of interest worth mentioning? That scenario.
Well, when you say they work for the department, you mean that...
They work for the housing department.
The outreach contractor has a contract that was vetted through a request for proposal, and they were issued a contract to provide services. What we have implemented, and I think that the housing department can more clearly explain this, they have implemented screening procedures during the RFP process whereby people are not allowed to undertake those contracts if they have interests adverse to the city. In other words, they've been suing the city as a result of housing issues. And now there's an additional layer, and if I say this wrong, I want the client to correct me, but if the outreach contractors, there's now an inquiry, have they undertaken any lawsuits against the landlord for the property for which they're assigned? So I'm not sure how to answer your question because it's a little unclear to me. It's always worth talking about, is there a conflict of interest? There's a lot of passion behind this issue, and I think the client, the housing department, has seriously embraced this issue and tried to ascertain, identify, and to ferret out what the real issue is. And so at this point, it's certainly worth talking about, but there has been nothing specific identified to which we can specifically address and remediate.
Okay, so back to my question. Thank you for that's additional information. It helps me understand that there's no conflict of interest of that nature. Thank you for clarifying that. But I'm asking you a legal question. If somebody who is working for the housing department is on the board of one of these not-for-profit organizations that the housing department is contracting with, is that in and of itself a conflict of interest?
I'm not prepared to give you a legal opinion without additional information. So the question is if there's somebody working for the housing department and they're on the board of an outreach contractor concurrent to their performance of city job duties, is there a conflict of interest?
Yeah, that's one part.
Is
That's
that the
question
question?
A. That's one of the questions, yes.
Okay, and what's the next question?
No, please answer that one first.
Well, all right. Number one, I'm not prepared to just give a spontaneous, extemporaneous public comment on that kind of a question. Two, I'm not the conflict of interest attorney for the city. And three, if there are allegations, what I'd like to do is schedule an appointment with your office and the appropriate deputy from my office so that we can undertake an evaluation of that question.
Obviously, you're a lawyer and I'm not. But what you just caused me to think of is another question.
Okay.
You say you're not the conflict of interest lawyer in the office. So, Mr. Chairman, isn't one of the segments of one of the two motions that's before us I could have sworn that it talked about conflict of interest and clarity as to whether or not there are or are not conflict of interest.
That's true, that's what we're discussing now.
Yeah.
And the answer as we sit now is that we have identified no conflict of interest.
I know, but
And the other thing I want to add, pursuant to, I believe, another proceeding regarding the REAP contractors, is my office did provide, I believe, an opinion letter whereby the position of, with respect to conflict of interest of the REAP contractors, provided that they are not involved in any decision-making regarding remediation of code violations and removal from the program, the REAP program. You may recall that in order for a property to be removed from REAP, there has to be a motion before City Council for removal of the property from REAP. That decision as to whether or not a code violation has been corrected must rest with the Housing Department inspectors, and the client is doing that. And that was the one issue as far as conflict of interest that my office previously opined on.
okay. But conflict of interest is a segment of what this item, which was agendized, and I appreciate the city attorney sending the city attorney to help clarify and help us understand what the city attorney's involvement was on this item. But what I'm wondering is, why isn't the conflict of interest lawyer from your office here to answer questions about conflict of interest? And I wanted to make it very, very clear. As a council member, I do not have the authority to require your boss, Mr. Chutanich, to send a specific lawyer to this committee. But I am asking the question, why is it that the conflict of interest lawyer, as you pointed out, who's not here, why isn't that person here?
Well, the reason being is that my office is not here to render an opinion on the conflict of interest issue because it is not a request that was made pursuant to the full city council. And that's the information that I have, and that's the answer.
Okay, you're following the letter of the law and your requirements. Absolutely. Thank you.
Ms. Perry.
I just need to ask the Housing Department a question. I seconded the motion for Mr. Parks, and the question regarding conflict was with respect to the, quote, tenant organizations, end quote, having the ability to delay a REAP property from compliance, thus allowing their clients or tenants to have reduced rents for a longer period of time. Now, in your analysis, did you look at it from that perspective?
We did ask every organizations and entities that might have information, case-related incident, specific incident, to provide us with that information so we can look into it and identify if there was any conflict of interest. Nothing was provided to us to date. We keep this still open. We told all these entities that anytime they have any incident or information that we can investigate, we'll be happy to do that. So far, nobody has submitted any information or incident to us to investigate that.
So your methodology was you put it out there as a request to see what you got back.
Correct.
And if nobody comes back to you with information, that's where it will stand.
Because there was no incident or specific information provided in the motion for us to look at, that was the approach that we took, yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Alarcon?
The
members, we do have
first,
two more items.
Yeah. With regard to the fact scenario that Mr. Carlin has presented, is it not true that many, probably thousands of city employees are members of nonprofit organizations, boards of directors?
I don't have that information, Councilman.
Okay, I do, and I don't have it specifically, but I think that's generally the case. In fact, we encourage our employees to participate in nonprofit organizations and serve on boards of directors. In fact, every council member is a member of the League of Cities, and many council members are members of the board of directors of the League of Cities. And under that general fact scenario, there is no, I don't need to be an attorney to know that there is no conflict of interest just based on that fact scenario. It would have to involve the sphere of influence of the person serving on the board. What is the specific case involved? Are they enriching themselves? Are they enriching the organization? All those questions are to get at the nut of whether or not there was a conflict of interest. But just because a city employee serves on the board of directors of a nonprofit corporation does not mean that there is a conflict of interest. And if somebody perceives that to be a conflict of interest, then I would challenge them to provide the specific evidence to show that there was an undue sphere of influence over a city contract. And otherwise, we could go on and on with this. The only question I have is whether this is a witch hunt or a wild goose chase. But in any case, it's a waste of taxpayer money to cause an investigation based on simply a general, broad allegation that some conflict of interest occurred. If we investigated every single one of these allegations, we would do nothing else. Because, these kinds of allegations that come because some gadfly in city council makes a general presentation, that's insane. That is not the way to investigate these claims, and I think the city attorney has investigated to the extent that based on this general claim, there is no conflict of interest. Now, if there's a specific allegation, then somebody should make it. But to hide behind these general allegations is really, that is disconcerting, and it concerns me as to whether or not it is their interest to bias or influence the city council in a way so as to bias them to serve their specific interests. And that's how I'm going to walk away with this, that this in fact demonstrates that these organizations are operating legally and in no way have conflicts of interest. If in fact an organization that advocates on behalf of a particular group hires somebody in the city who does exactly the same thing as their full-time job, that should enhance their ability to serve their nonprofit goals. And so I just think this is ridiculous, and we should move on. But I will walk away with an understanding that these allegations are bogus, and they, if anything, they solidify me in a different direction than the interests of the people that made these allegations.
Okay. Seeing no other concerns, then without objection, we'll adopt the Wesson Reyes motion, and at the request of Councilmember Parks, we'll receive and file the Parks-Perry motion. Thank you very much. Mr. Torres, where are we? Item 3?
Item 3.
Please read it.
Thank you. Item 3 are CRA and CAO reports relative to amending the 2011 CRA budget for additional carryover resources of $170.8 million and to transfer up to $5.2 million to implement the CRA's early retirement incentive program.
Okay. Who's?
Lisa Johnson-Smith, City Administrative Officer. The agency requests authority to amend its 2010-11 budget by $170 million, transfer approximately $5.2 million to its early retirement incentive program fund to pay for the upfront costs, to be reimbursed by employee contributions, and to repay the project area tax increment funds from agency special revenue funds as soon as the funds become available. Subsequent to the release of the agency's transmittal, the agency made a request to transfer $631,000 back to the project area, which was generated instead of transferring these funds to the ERIP fund. The attachment 4 shows a breakdown of the $631,000 in interest income. So as a result, if that recommendation is approved, the special revenue, which was really originally set aside, would be reduced by $631,900 from approximately $2 million to approximately $1.4 million. And a like amount of project area tax increment resources would be increased by that amount in order to fund the agency's early retirement incentive program fund. In addition, on November 12th, the city approved to use approximately $1.1 million of agency carryover resources from the CD9 project area for a payment for a note that was due on the Slauson Wall site.
and the CAO was instructed to include the identified carryover funds in our report, which was done in recommendation number 2. For the 2010-11 budget, the agency has 270 authorized positions. As of November 5th, the agency has 255 filled positions and 15 vacant positions. As you know, the agency is currently undergoing their EREP program, which is set to close on December 17th, 2010. And as a result, the CAO requests that the agency report back to the council by January 17th, 2011, on various information relative to their authorized position counts and any revised numbers that they may have due to the EREP program, an updated agency organizational chart, a recommendation from the agency that would include the revised count based on employees leaving, as well as an assessment of its ability to proceed with workload and service delivery. There's no impact on the city general fund. Approval of the proposed actions will involve the community relevant, this agency's adopted 2010-11 budget program. The revised budget will be $757.1 million as a result of this approval of these actions.
Okay. Hey, Kat, how many, how's the early retirement program work? I mean, you seeing the movement you need to see? Is it the right kind of positions or?
Councilman, the early retirement program, I think as we've reported to the council in the past, was successful in the sense that it is oversubscribed, if you will. We have a limit on the number of, on the amount of salary savings that is eligible under the program. And we have approximately, Steve has the current numbers, I believe it's 56, Steve?
54.
54. We have 54 employees who have signed up for the program to achieve the salary savings that we've identified. We need approximately 42 employees. We have until December 16th for employees to make their final decisions with respect to any additional rescissions. But so far, it looks like we're going to reach the 42 number that we need. About 2/3, roughly, of those positions are in the central office, and about 1/3 of those positions are in the regions. We won't know exactly which positions are vacated until December 16th, but we have begun meeting with our regional administrators to talk about redeployment of staff. We're looking at redeploying staff from the central office to the regions. We are looking at moving people around within regions. We're looking at other efficiencies to make sure that we can deploy the program with the 20% reduction in staff that's anticipated.
All right, Mr. Carr. Oh, yes.
If I could, Mr. Chair, just to add to Mr. Hollis's comments, a couple of other things that we're doing to kind of prepare ourselves for the retirements that are expected in less than 30 days is Chris Essel, our CEO, has put in place a requirement that every employee who has submitted a notice of intent to retire, whether they do retire or not, so all 54 employees who've submitted a notice to complete a transition plan document that specifies what their particular duties are, particularly those that are time-sensitive that may be occurring over the next 3 to 6 months, to review those with their supervisors. Those, in fact, are due today to our HR department. She's also put in place workforce management teams that are cross-disciplinary teams of bargaining unit representatives, members of management, and members of all of the affected cost centers. So there are regional representatives and central office representatives. And the purpose of the workforce management teams, we're going to be reporting back to our senior management in a couple of weeks, is to look at a variety of strategies that collaboratively, kind of bubble up some good ideas in terms of how to better position ourselves for the post-ERIP environment, looking at operating efficiencies, how central office can collaborate more effectively with the regions to support the redevelopment work program activities, how can we invest and train our remaining staff so that they can perform additional duties or be able to compete for expanded responsibilities. So we're trying to be as proactive as we can. While we recognize that we're not in control of the ERIP process, we're taking every measure we think we can in order to position ourselves for what will happen in just a matter of a few weeks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cardenas.
Yeah.
You leaving?
think, Cal, you mentioned that on December 16th, you'll know what the final ERIP list is as far as the names of people who are going to retire out under this program?
Yes, sir.
What happens in the process that that list doesn't get finalized until that day? Why is it that day that, you know, we won't know? Or you won't know, then that we won't know?
Well, under the memorandum of understanding with our bargaining units, they had 120 days to make each individual had 120 days from the time we opened the window of retirement for them to make a final decision. So that literally they have until December 16th. Anyone who's on that list now could, on December 16th, say, I've reconsidered and I'm not leaving. So we just have no control over that process at all until the 16th.
So on the 16th, people have to sleep on it, think about it, sweat about it, whatever, and then finally say, keep me on the list, I am retiring, or wait a minute, put in my paperwork, but I decided to stay.
Literally, they have to walk out the door on the 16th.
What's that?
Literally, they walk out the door on the 16th and don't come back.
Oh, really?
Now, we have some employees who have chosen an earlier retirement date, and I believe 6 of our employees have retired and have left the building permanently.
So there's at least 6 individuals that they've gone to the point of no return?
That's correct.
Okay, literally.
That's
okay.
correct.
All right.
And Councilmember, just a point of clarification. So our retirement is under CalPERS, and so our employees are covered by CalPERS, and so the 90-day window is the CalPERS window. So they're retiring under CalPERS, and under the CalPERS Golden Handshake rule, they can rescind their retirement. They have to retire during the 90 days to take advantage of the 2-year additional service credit, but they have the ability to rescind their intent to retirement up until the last day. So they
and that date is December 16th?
Yes, but all of the employees have filed the necessary paperwork with CalPERS, so they're in the process. So it would be at their election to rescind.
So 54 people are in the process?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, there are 54 people who would like to be retired. We only have room, if you will, under the current side letter for approximately 42 positions.
42. Okay. Now, that being the case, I'm curious, what's the average length of stay of those people on, as I'm describing, on the bubble, depending on how many people finalize and walk out? What is it 20 years, 26 years, 30 years? What is it?
I believe the cutoff right now between those who are in the among those who look to be they will make the retirement list, and those that are on the waiting list, if you will, is.
And you're speculating. You're just giving me a rough figure, right? I mean, just.
It's 28 years.
28 years.
28 years. So if you're less than 28 years, and you went for the full 5-year program, you're on the waiting list.
Right.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot of years.
Yes, sir.
Okay. When it comes to the report, I'm looking at a table called Transfer to Early Retirement Incentive Program Fund, and it gives all the project areas. And it starts off with the Adelante East Side, and it has a dollar figure of $94,700, and then it goes down to Wilshire, Korea at $153,600 at the bottom. And so I'm just curious, every area has a different figure. How did the department arrive at amassing those figures to create their total?
Councilmember Jim D'Antona for the Community Redevelopment Agency.
And what's your title there?
Chief Deputy to the CEO.
So what does that mean? What do you do?
Whatever Chris Essel asked me to do. No, I'm a special liaison to the City Hall, City Council offices, and Mayor's office, and work on a lot of the legislative issues. And saw that this would be a particular question of interest to the council. In the review, staff put together a list of the actual fiscal year 10 budget of admin costs for each project area. And then as a percentage of the total admin budget, then allocated that percentage of total tax increment to the ERIP funding. So
the numbers vary from area to area because you're taking a percentage total.
correct. So it's a percentage of the total admin budget for the actual fiscal year 10.
And the percentage total is equal across all the areas.
Correct. So it's, in some, obviously, Reseda, for instance, Reseda-Canoga Park, which has the highest number, is a particularly big project area, or has a lot of, is its own project area and region. But if you look as a region as a whole, for instance, downtown has 6 different project areas in it, and therefore the numbers are smaller, but there's more of them. So eventually, if you look at how it all balances out, downtown was put in the most to it, but through 6 or 7 different project areas.
Okay. And then the table right before that is attachment D, operating budget, fiscal year 10-11 carryover adjustment. And again, it has the project areas going all the way down the list in the same order. How was that figure arrived at? You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It starts off with Adelante East Side at 26,800, everybody in between, and once again, Wilshire Center, Koreatown at 43,400 for a grand total of 900,000.
Correct. And that, I think Steve can confirm this, but I believe this was given that same percentage. As you can see, Reseda-Canoga Park tops out again, with Pacoima Panorama City coming in number 2, then down to Hollywood at number 3. So the percentages that were yielded across are the same.
Councilmember Steve Valenzuela, CFO, what this table is looking at is, as part of the recommendations before the council, is a request that up to $900,000 be allocated for potential backfills of critical positions resulting from the ERIP. This would be above and beyond current vacant budgeted positions that we have in the FY11 budget. But we've identified, as the CAO has also reported, that there may be as many as 15 critical positions that we would need to backfill, of which 9 would be backfilled under current budgeted authority. We think as many as 6 might need to be backfilled. And so this is just a cushion that we have identified. We would be obviously reporting through the CEO to this committee and council as we actually implement this. But the $900,000 is what this shows is the allocation. Again, it was done on the same pro rata portion using each project area's proportional share of the total admin budget in FY10.
Okay. You answered my next question. But my request of the department to the answer to that question is, before you get to committee and you start to look at how and where you're going to either promote and or hire the 9, or perhaps ask for a few more positions as well above and beyond the budgeted number of positions, I would like to walk through that with the department, because I want to make sure that my area, if I was unlucky enough to see a bunch of 30-some year veterans in the department ERIP out on December 16th, and all of a sudden I have a gutted area when it comes to staffing, I want to make sure that you're addressing, and appropriately so, the new way in which you're going to address my area with staffing. I'm not going to ever say that I want a 1-for-1 or what have you. I don't run the department. But what I do want to understand is the logic that goes into, well, we had 4 people doing this, now we're going to have 2, but we're going to put somebody else doing, we're changing their responsibilities. I'm fine with all that, but I want you to explain that to me so that I understand and I don't get frustrated 6 months down the road and say, why isn't this happening? And all of a sudden somebody says, well, we don't have enough people. Okay? Because ERIP is not a science, right? It's kind of, it happens, and then after the fact, you try to make the best of the new world order within your department, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to know more about the logic behind that new order before you come to committee. Okay? Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
Ms. Perry, any? Okay, then without objection, we'll adopt the CAO report. Item 4.
Item 4 are LAHD and CAO reports regarding authority to apply funds equal to the amount of expired Affordable Housing Trust Fund commitments, to convert 4 projects from tax credit to bonding financing, and authority to amend an affordable housing trust fund loan agreement for the Yale Street project to include $200,000 in accordance with LEDWP Sustainable Design and Economic Development Guidelines.
Good morning, Angelica Samayoa with the CAO's office. I can provide a brief overview to give you the highlights of this request. The Housing Department requests authority to amend awards that were issued as part of the 2010 Round 2 Notice of Funding Availability. Back in July 2010, the Council and Mayor approved the results of the Round 2 NOFA and authorized the Housing Department to issue $35.6 million worth of awards to 13 projects through letters of commitment. 11 of the 13 proposals recipients applied for the state's tax credit allocation committee for 9% tax credit, but only 4 received awards. Based on established NOFA policies, funds from projects that did not receive their TCAC award or their leveraging source award should revert back to the trust fund for future NOFA rounds. However, due to the significantly low success rate of the city in the last 2 state TCAC rounds, the Housing Department evaluated the financing of all of the unsuccessful Round 2 proposals that had applied for TCAC and determined that 4 projects are ideal candidates for bond financing from the state's debt limit allocation committee, but only if the Round 2 NOFA awards are maintained, and that comes out to $12.1 million, and increased by $13.9 million, revising the total proposed funding for these 4 projects to $25.9 million. The proposed increases will not exceed the trust funds, the NOFA's maximum allowable per project funding limit of $14 million. To make the additional $13.9 million available, the department proposes to increase funds to the 4 projects derived from home funds, approximately 10.36, that comes from the remaining 3 Round 2 NOFA projects that would just not be continued at this point. 1.7 million in additional home funds coming from another Round 2 project that was later determined to be eligible for a neighborhood stabilization program Round 2 funds. So they kind of are doing it. It's a fund exchange.
How did they select the 4?
I think the Housing Department could probably explain their methodology a lot better than I can.
The priorities, good morning, Helmi Hesrick, Assistant General Manager at LAHD. The priorities that we put in place were to primarily look at local subsidy, maximizing leverage. We wanted to prevent project-based voucher commitments from the Housing Authority that were going to expire in December 31st from disappearing and having to recompete for those. And we looked at the leverage that every project that was stalled had and ranked them by their maximum amount of leverage per unit.
What's happening with the other projects, the pending projects? Is there...
There were 8 projects that were stalled without tax credit awards. 2 projects separate from that had gone to the MHP competition. So they peeled themselves out of the tax credit competition and went to MHP. Those projects still have their awards, or LAHD awards, with them. Of the 8, we selected 4 for funding at 4%. One of the projects of the 4 that did not get funding, that we were rescinding funding for, one of those projects, Canby Woods, found an alternative solution to move forward as a 4% without additional funding from LAHD. The funding that it had allocated to it was 5% funds from the CRAs, so it couldn't be used in any other project anyway, so that one is moving forward. So we have a 5th project going forward as a 4%, and they solve their own problem. And there's 3 projects that we are recommending that the funding be rescinded from, and we're asking them to recompete in the next round.
Any questions? No. Okay.
Move the item.
Then, without objection, we'll adopt the CAO report on that item. Mr. Torres, is there any more business before this committee?
Are there general public comments?
No.
Okay. Then the desk is clear.
This committee's adjourned.